They thought Iran would never rise again. The Western analysts called it the crumbling state. Sanctions strangled. Procs abound. Too divided to strike. But deep beneath the marble and mosques, in the black vaults of Tehran's underground war command, a lion had been sharpening its claws in silence. That lion had a name. Ayat Reza Sadeghi. Not the man the world expected. A scholar, a jurist, a former poetry professor turned commander, clad not in camouflage, but in flowing black robes and steel-rimmed glasses. His voice? Soft as dusk, but when he spoke, generals listened. Satellites moved. Enemies sweated. He had waited, planned, prayed, built, and on the morning the bombs fell on Damascus, he no longer waited. Damascus, the spark that lit the inferno. The explosion struck at 4:47 a.m. Precision bombs, smart guided by Israeli F-35s, tore through the residential blocks of Sayyida Zainab. A school, a clinic, a mosque, and a safe house, one that held 3 Iranian Revolutionary Guard advisors, unarmed, asleep, along with 14 Syrian children. By sunrise, the footage had spread across the world. Smoldering rubble, a child's sandal buried in the date, the Quran torn in half, pages still fluttering in the wind. And then came the silence from Israel. No apology, no denial, no remorse. In Tehran, the Grand Council met beneath the sacred dome. Most expected cautious diplomacy, harsh condemnation, maybe a few counterstrikes. Instead, Ayat Sadeghi stood, his turban shadowing his eyes. He raised his hand, not to speak, but to signal. The war began in that moment, not with a shout, but with a whisper. Bismillah. Zulfikar rising, the sword unsheathed. At 6 p.m. Tehran time, the underground silos opened. From the Zagros Mountains to the Central Desert, missile bays that hadn't seen daylight in decades came to life. Like serpents rising from sand. Over 1,200 precision-guided ballistic missiles screamed into the sky, invisible to early radar, masked by jamming drones swarming over Iraqi airspace. Their target, Israeli air bases, naval ports, weapons labs, radar towers, and command centers. But it wasn't just the missiles. On the cyberspace front, the Fajr 313 Division, elite Iranian cyber command, launched Operation Karnavai-Yisibe. In less than 3 minutes, they penetrated deep into Israel's air defense AI algorithms. The Iron Dome, the pride of Israeli defense, began to falter. One battery failed, then another, then 3 more. Ashdod was the first to be hit. 7 missile impacts in under 20 seconds, naval yards shredded, fuel depots burning. In the north, Haifa's port turned into a rising pyre. Explosions ruptured dock submarines and container silos. All across Israel, sirens howled. And then, silence. A terrifying silence, not from peace, but from paralysis. The entire system was overwhelmed. And it had only been the first wave. Jerusalem's panic, Tehran's calm. In the Knesset, chaos. Ministers screaming. Phones dead. Satellite relays jammed. Command bunkers in Tel Aviv struggling to coordinate with airborne squadrons now flying blind. Prime Minister Eldon hammered the desk. How did they penetrate our shields? Why didn't we see this coming? No one had an answer, because they had underestimated the man behind Iran's war board. In Tehran, Ayat Sadeghi stood calm in the heart of the sacred defense bunker. Around him, maps flickered with live satellite data. Officers moved with quiet precision. The Ayat's voice was low, methodical. Phase 2. Begin targeting logistics. Deny fuel. Deny mobility. Leave their army blind, but let them breathe, for now. His strategy was not to kill fast, but to bleed strategically. Iran would not destroy Israel in a single night. It would unravel it, piece by piece, nerve by nerve, while never becoming what it fought. We do not bomb synagogues, he told his commanders. We bomb war machines. Israel strikes back and bleeds. By midnight, the Israeli Air Force retaliated. F-35 Ayadirs took off from surviving bases, their stealth frames knifing through the stratosphere. They struck hard, Isfahan's outskirts, parts of the Mashhad military grid, and several suspected missile sites near Kerman. Dozens died, but Iran was prepared. Decoys, mobile shields, subterranean movement. The real launch systems were buried over 2 kilometers deep in hardened mountains, built to withstand bunker busters and nuclear shock. And by 2 a.m., Iran struck back again. This time, Dimona, Israel's nuclear research facility. No direct hits, just near misses. But the message was clear. We know your sacred vault. We can reach it. Next time, we don't miss. The voice of Persia echoes across the world. As cities across the Middle East shook, the world finally looked to Tehran, expecting a raving tyrant, a dictator with bloodlust. Instead, they saw Ayat Sadeghi step before a camera. No weapons behind him, no flags, just a simple desk and a copy of Naj al-Balagha beside his hand. He looked into the lens and spoke to the world. We did not start this war, but you must understand something very clearly. For 40 years, you tried to strangle us. You killed our scientists. You poisoned our skies. You bombed our allies and laughed in our faces. You called us terrorists while you killed children in our streets. You assassinated our heroes in foreign lands and expected us to thank you. You think because we pray and fast, we are weak. But faith is not surrender. And now, you have woken the lion. He paused. The silence cut like a blade. We will not conquer you. We will not erase you. But we will end your illusions. And when this is done, when your guns run dry and your Iron Dome becomes a graveyard of rust, you will remember one thing. Persia did not kneel. Not in the face of Pharaoh. Not in the face of Rome. Not in the face of empires clothed in silicon and drones. We are not afraid. And we are not alone. The night ends. The war begins. By dawn, Israeli command was in disarray. Nearly 20% of its air force had been damaged or grounded. Oil refineries were in flames. Satellite uplinks to international defense contractors were severed. More shockingly, Hezbollah had moved. So had the Houthis. So had militias in Iraq. So had silent allies in places no analyst had guessed. And across the Arab Street, from Cairo to Karachi, crowds poured out chanting the same name. Sadeghi, Sadeghi, Sadeghi. The Lion of Iran had roared, and the world was listening. They called it impenetrable, Israel's pride, America's proof of concept, a miracle of modern warfare. The Iron Dome, a billion-dollar defense shield designed to erase missiles from the sky like raindrops off steel. But steel rusts. And that night, in the darkness between thunder and defiance, the dome cracked. Not because it wasn't built well, but because Iran had been watching, listening, learning. And when the time came, Ayat Reza Sadeghi didn't strike it head-on. He unraveled it from within. 3:12 a.m., over the Red Sea. Israeli patrol radars picked up 27 high-speed targets, flying low and fast, skimming above the water. Cruise missiles? No. Drones. Small, old, half of them decoys. The air defense crews relaxed. Too easy. Another round of Iranian scare tactics. They launched interceptors. Half the drones were torn apart. The other half scattered. Ran. Hid behind terrain. But no one saw the real threat. Not until it was too late. High above, far beyond conventional radar range, in orbit just beneath detection thresholds, Iran's ace in the dark was moving. It wasn't a weapon. It was a satellite. Old, Soviet in origin, modified by rogue engineers in Mashhad. For months, it had loitered silently above the Middle East. And tonight, it came alive. The pulse. At exactly 3:14 a.m., the satellite sent out a single burst, not of data, not of force, but of code. Simple, elegant, deadly. It was a quantum trigger seeded 5 years earlier through a cybersecurity backdoor in a French-Israeli drone software contractor, a company no one suspected. And the moment that code pulsed through the mesh, Israel's missile shield stuttered. Just for a second. Just enough. Across the sky, Iranian Feta 313s began descending. Then Zulfigars. Then Shahabs. Missiles in staggered waves, layered like a symphony of vengeance, aimed with precision AI developed in the underground labs of Shiraz. The Iron Dome fired. It tried, but its timing was off. It missed. Ashdod burns. The first strikes hit Ashdod Naval Command. Oil tanks erupted like volcanoes. Docks shattered. Frigates listed sideways in the water, half sunk, burning like matchsticks. Then came the port cranes, twisted into metal spaghetti, and the fuel pipelines feeding the fleet? Gone. Ashed. Israel's economic artery was severed in 38 seconds. One commander sent out a final signal. They know our gaps. They timed the fuses. This isn't retaliation. This is a masterpiece. Haifa, the north folds. In the north, Haifa's port are prepared for bombardment, underground hangars, rapid launch airfields, blast shields. But they hadn't prepared for hypersonics. Iran unveiled its newest arrow, the Rod 5, twice the speed of sound, painted matte black, a ghost on radar. They came in low, 5 of them, each tipped with cluster warheads. Haifa's missile defense caught 2. 3 landed. The entire northern airbase chain went offline. The hangars caved in. The runway vaporized. And then came the cyber silence. Iran's virus finished the job, corrupting targeting software for drones still in midair. Friendly fire incidents erupted. Israeli Skyguard drones locked onto their own transport convoys. Chaos reigned. 4:09 a.m. Southern shock. While missiles hammered the north, Iran sent a surprise through the south. From Yemen, Houthi-run units launched long-range drones, flying low across the Red Sea. Using terrain-hugging algorithms fed from Iranian satellites, they moved unseen. One made it to Ayat. It didn't need explosives. It carried an EMP coil. The detonation knocked out comms, disabled tracking, blinded radar. For 5 minutes, southern Israel was blind. And in that blindness, an Iranian cyber unit disguised as Israeli Signal Command sent false targeting data to one Iron Dome battery near Beersheba. It misfired. It shot down 2 Israeli jets by mistake. And in the chaos, 3 more Iranian missiles passed through and tore apart an ammunition depot the size of a city block. In Tel Aviv, rage and realization. The war room was boiling. Prime Minister Eldon slammed his fist against the digital table. What the hell is going on? How are they inside our systems? The general looked pale. Sweat gleamed on his scalp. They've been preparing this for years, so. They knew our rhythms, our backup codes. They didn't just strike us, they read us. The Iron Dome teams were rotated out. Software was rewritten on the fly. American consultants joined live from Colorado. But it didn't matter. The myth was dead. The world had seen the unthinkable. Israel's invincible wall, broken. Tehran doesn't celebrate. It calculates. In the sacred defense bunker, there was no applause. Ayat Reza Sadeghi stood behind his officers, hands clasped, watching the live feed in silence. Every enemy fireball, every missile flash, every radar report. Not one smile crossed his face. Endurance, not arrogance, he murmured. He turned to Commander Vahidi. Activate Phase 3. Cut the arteries. Bleed them without breaking the bones. Let the world see. We don't conquer. We correct. World reaction, shock and denial. Washington froze. No one expected Iran to strike this hard, or this precisely. EU leaders condemned the violence, but privately, intelligence circles buzzed. This was surgical, beyond our models. Israel was supposed to be the shield. Now it's a cracked mirror. Arab streets erupted in praise. Even nations with tense ties to Tehran found their people cheering. In Cairo, murals of Ayat Sadeghi appeared overnight. In Jakarta, crowds prayed with Iranian flags wrapped around them. The world had doubted Iran. Now they watched it reshape the battlefield. End of the night, the fear of morning. By dawn, Israel had lost 3 naval vessels, 4 air bases, 8 major fuel depots, thousands of military assets. But what truly shattered the nation was not the destruction. It was a message that they could be reached, that their sky was no longer safe, that Persia had broken the legend of invincibility, with math, with silence, with code. And as the sun rose over a nervous Middle East, Ayat Sadeghi spoke again, not to his people, but to the world. Standing beneath the golden dome in calm, he looked at the camera and said, "We are not gods. We are not giants. But we are a people who refuse to kneel. And tonight, you saw what that means." The missiles were only the beginning. Israel had survived the opening wave. Barely. Ports in flames. runways torn, defense systems stunned. But in the chaos of fire and static, the true weapon of Iran was only now moving into play. Not rockets, not drones, not tanks, people, operatives, ghosts, cells embedded in the bones of a broken region, waiting. And when Ayat Reza Sadeghi lifted his pen and signed the Phase 3 directive, the shadows answered. Code name, Yaugay Kabula. Phase 3, the uprising. At 7:01 a.m., encrypted signals pulsed from Tehran, routed through triple-layer proxies in Najaf, Kabul, and Sayed Zainab. The recipients weren't soldiers. They weren't even on official payrolls. They were everything else. Militia leaders in Basra, trained by Quds force. Drone operators in the Bekaa Valley, invisible to every Western satellite. Engineers in Beirut, sitting on missile arrays disguised as farming equipment. A hacker unit in Karaj that controlled a dozen shell companies inside Tel Aviv's infrastructure grid. And all of them woke up to a single phrase. Zamani shall rise. Lebanon, the north explodes. The first to strike was Hezbollah. Within 20 minutes of the code activation, over 2,300 rockets were in the air. Not random, not symbolic. They were precision-guided by Iranian Quds, 22 drones hovering in blackout mode above the Lebanese border. Haifa's northern defenses were already wounded. Now they shattered. A major munitions base near Kiryat Shmona, gone. An electric substation powering 200,000 homes, fried. A convoy of armored vehicles headed for the Golan Heights, turned into molten steel. But that wasn't the worst part. They came on foot. Hezbollah fighters, not dozens, but hundreds, surged forward under drone cover. Not for conquest, not for flag planting. To take ground, to hold it, to choke Israel's northern throat. Israeli commanders panicked. Troop redeployments were rushed. Elite Sayeret units were dispatched, only to be ambushed by roadside IEDs triggered by AI facial recognition traps. The north was in flames. Syria, the Golan awakens. From the war-torn plains of southern Syria, Iran's secret investment came alive. Over the past decade, under cover of chaos, Tehran had built the Southern Resistance Front, an alliance of ex-regime loyalists, Shia militia, and defected Druze. They struck in silence. Using Iranian-supplied gliders and camouflage buggies, they crossed the frontier into the Israeli-held Golan Heights, a region no one thought would ever fall again. They didn't take bases. They took mountains. And on those mountains, they mounted Iranian jamming towers that knocked out Israeli drone access over entire sectors of the battlefield. For the first time in 30 years, Israeli command had to rely on human scouts instead of UAV feeds. They were blind. Iraq, ghost convoys and exploding air bases. Baghdad denied involvement, but the truth was known in whispers. Iran's proxy militias in Iraq, Kataib Hezbollah, Harakat al-Nujaba, Asab al-Ohak, had long kept arms encaved beneath the Euphrates. Now, they moved west. Convoys of disguised ambulances carried shoulder-mounted rockets. Oil tankers packed with drone launchers rolled across Anbar province toward the Jordanian frontier. And while Israel looked north and west, they forgot to look east, until a fuel depot at Nevatim Air Base in southern Israel exploded from inside. Sabotage, planted weeks ago by a contractor with an Iraqi passport and 100 fake identities. In one night, Israel's second-largest airbase was paralyzed. Runways melted, hangars incinerated, munitions blown. Inside Israel, the invisible blade. And then came the part no one had prepared for, the infiltration. Iran had not only prepared the skies and borders, it had planted seeds inside the walls. A network of operatives, decades in the making, embedded in civilian firms, universities, startups. Some were Palestinian sympathizers. Others were sleeper agents. All of them were loyal to one idea, end the Zionist war engine. They activated at once. Power station algorithms corrupted. Water pumps shut down across parts of southern Israel. Digital billboards in Tel Aviv replaced with quotes from Imam Ali. A just war is one fought for the oppressed. But the greatest shock came at Ben Gurion International Airport. At 11:23 a.m., for exactly 43 seconds, air traffic control blacked out. Not a single plane landed or took off. And in the confusion, A transport plane delivering Israeli reinforcements to the north collided with a grounded carrier. Israel's own news anchors began asking, "Is this war winnable?" Ayat Sadeghi watches from the ashes. Tehran did not gloat. Ayat Reza Sadeghi, standing beneath the black and gold tapestry in the sacred dome of Qom, watched each report come in with surgical focus. Every move had been predicted. Every Israeli strike met with triple-layer counters. Every city still operational. Every leader still in place. But this wasn't about just winning a battle. This was about dismantling a belief, the belief that Israel could not bleed. And now, the world saw not only could it bleed, it was bleeding. Ayat Sadeghi finally spoke to his advisors. Send this message to every ally. Do not chase victory. Let victory find us beneath the dust of the enemy's pride. The West reacts and hesitates. In Washington, red lights flooded the Pentagon. NATO satellites retasked. France, Germany, and the UK issued emergency statements. But no one moved. Why? Because unlike the wars of the past, this one had no clear villain. Iran wasn't invading cities. It wasn't committing atrocities. It was retaliating with surgical logic and moral framing. And the Arab world, South Asia, and parts of Africa, they weren't condemning. They were watching, and in many cases, cheering. The lion doesn't roar. He waits. At midnight, Israeli generals prepared for a mass air assault, the final hope to reclaim initiative. But the moment their strike groups lifted off, they were met with a new threat. Silence, jammers, spoofed GPS, interference so sophisticated it bent real-time targeting. And when the planes returned, bruised and fuel-starved, they found their command towers in darkness. A single message had been painted on the side of one scorched dome by an Iranian cybercell. You declared war on shadows. Now, the shadows own your sky. When Tel Aviv went dark, the world stopped breathing. Not just lights, not just phones, everything. Power, water, traffic, comm networks, banking terminals, air defense towers. Gone. In less than 6 seconds, a metropolis of 4 million souls, the heart of Israel's command economy, dropped to its knees. Not from bombs, not from missiles, but from a whisper, a line of code, carved by Iranian cyber engineers beneath the sand months, maybe years, before the war began. 0:14 a.m., the pulse hits. The pulse didn't come from Iran. It came from Tel Aviv itself. A malware strain known only by its code name, Zabad-e-Sakut, strike of silence, buried inside the firmware of a civilian communications tower, invisible to firewalls, invisible to Israeli cyber defense. It activated when Israel attempted to reboot its national defense net after losing half its Iron Dome network. It was designed to wait for weakness. And when it struck, it spoke to every layer of Tel Aviv's infrastructure, faking emergency protocols, misrouting backup power, initiating fake lockdowns in traffic grids, and locking nuclear doors. All systems dead. Hospitals blinked out. Ventilators failed. Backup generators refused to ignite. They'd been spoofed too. The stock market, running on reserve systems, crashed internally. Algorithms melted. Trades executed at phantom values. Billions lost in under 90 seconds. The emergency sirens replaced by silence. Then a single chant broadcast citywide. In the name of the blood of the innocent, you will kneel. IDF Central Command, offline. Iron Dome Terminal Alpha, loop jammed. Tel Aviv Control Tower, grounded. Water Filtration Plant 3, status, critical failure. National Grid, overheated, cascading trip. The Israeli military, confident in its high-tech shell, finally understood what it meant to face an enemy that learned in silence. The streets turned. Tel Aviv was paralyzed. People rushed into the streets. Cars collided in intersections. Security drones hovered aimlessly, unable to receive commands. Police tried to restore order but couldn't even contact each other. And then the screens lit up. All of them. Every billboard. Every monitor. Every remaining powered device. A face. Ayat Reza Sadeghi, seated in a simple room, surrounded not by weapons, but books. His voice, quiet, clear, terrifying and at control. We do not celebrate your suffering, but we warned you. The fire you light among children will one day reach your own homes. Tonight is not conquest. Tonight is correction. For every hospital you bombed in Syria, for every scientist you assassinated, for every sanction that choked a child's medicine, this is the justice you wrote. He paused, leaned forward. This is what it looks like when the lion wakes. Then the screens cut, and the city trembled. The enemy begins to break. Within hours, cracks appeared across Israel's entire chain of command. Elite units refused orders. Some soldiers refused to return to disabled bases, fearing further attacks. Others openly questioned why the government hadn't predicted any of this. Reservists, already stretched, began to disappear. Families fled Tel Aviv and Haifa, heading south into the desert. The Prime Minister tried to issue a national address from a bunker, but the feed was hacked mid-broadcast. His voice warped, overlaid with audio of Iranian martyrs' names. The public saw through it. Israel was losing control. The international response, frozen. Washington was paralyzed. No aircraft carriers had moved. No missiles launched. Because now, global analysts feared something more than war. Loss of narrative. For decades, Israel was a regional giant. High-tech. Untouchable. The bulwark of the West. But now, their enemies, those deemed backward, sanctioned, isolated, had brought them to their knees without firing a single nuclear weapon. And worst of all, Ayat Sadeghi hadn't even invaded. He had broken Israel without crossing the border. He had shown the world that power was no longer about who had more weapons. It was about who understood the battlefield in totality. European powers issued calls for de-escalation, their own systems now under minor cyber attacks, warnings, really, from Tehran's shadow net. China remained silent. Russia smiled, and across the global south, from Nigeria to Indonesia to Pakistan, people chanted, Sadeghi, Sadeghi, Sadeghi. The final blow, the kneel. By dawn, the situation was irreversible. Israel's main command towers were offline. The IDF's digital battlefield interface, Eretz-net, was permanently disabled. Drone fleets had been blinded. Cyber retaliation had failed. Civil unrest had begun to swell in the streets and in the ranks. And then came the final humiliation. Iran launched no missiles, not a single shot. Instead, Ayat Sadeghi's final command was not one of fire, but of mercy. Across Israeli territory, dozens of loudspeakers hidden in shattered outposts began broadcasting a single message in Hebrew. Lay down your arms. We have no interest in your homes. But we will no longer let you rule with impunity. And slowly, piece by piece, they obeyed. Not all, but enough. In Tel Aviv, entire security battalions disbanded themselves. In Haifa, anti-government protests sparked, led by reserve soldiers. The once mighty state, designed to never again kneel, had bent under the pressure of silence, of precision, of divine patience. Iran had not just won. It had changed the definition of war. Ayat Sadeghi's last broadcast. He appeared once more. Not triumphant, not with a banner behind him. No music, no theatrics, only dust on his cloak, and grief in his eyes. We are not conquerors. We do not step on graves. But we will never be slaves to those who weaponize lies, who wage wars behind smiling masks. Today, you kneel not before Iran. You kneel before the truth that oppression ends. Today, the lion does not roar. He watches, and he forgives, if you do not strike again. He stood, closed the book beside him, and walked away. And across the world, silence held. The world waited. America watched, and Iran did not flinch. Tel Aviv was dark. Haifa was burning. Israel's war machine, paralyzed. But while silence held in the ashes of that broken dome, across the Atlantic, another storm began to rise. Washington's pride, tested. Pentagon meetings stacked with red folders. Carrier groups shifting. Joint chiefs arguing between escalation and retreat. The president, pale under television lights, issued a threat. If Iran dares strike another ally, the full force of the United States Armed Forces will respond. But in Tehran, Ayat Reza Sadeghi didn't blink. He read the statement in the cold light of dawn, sipped from his clay cup of bitter tea, and set the paper down. Then he said only one word: "Let them come." The lion faces the eagle. Iran had prepared. While Western eyes watched missiles, Ayat Sadeghi had built a new kind of war, not one of endless guns, but layers. Layers of drones, layers of networks, layers of alliances that were invisible to maps. And most dangerously, a doctrine designed not to survive America, but to end it if pushed. Operation Za'iaka, the final venom. The war plan was old, refined, hidden in the minds of only 7 commanders. Not in files, not on servers, only memoized, taught by fire, tested in simulation bunkers beneath Isfahan. A plan that didn't require Iran to cross oceans. It required America to take one step too far, because that one step would awaken a chain that didn't just counter invasion. It punished ambition. The mistake comes from pride. At 2 a.m. Tehran time, satellite feed showed 2 U.S. carrier groups entering the Arabian Sea. The USS Gerald R. Ford and USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, accompanied by 60 support vessels and 4 nuclear submarines, formed the largest carrier strike package in 12 years. They signaled power, deterrence, but to Ayat Sadeghi, they signaled something else: overconfidence. And to the men beneath the mountain command bunkers, it signaled permission. Operation Za'iaka was unlocked. First blood, the sea burns. The U.S. fleet never saw it coming. From the coast of Hormozgan to the cliffs of Chabahar, over 1,000 sea-skimming drones launched from autonomous pads hidden beneath fake fishing villages. Powered by solar, programmed by silence, they cut across the sea like sharks beneath radar. Their target? Not ships. The cables. The deep-sea data lines running from the Gulf to U.S. Central Command. Severed. Then came the second wave. Hypersonic no-class missiles, ghost-guided by IRGC satellites from the Alborz constellation, streaked into the sky. 5 U.S. destroyers were hit in under 8 minutes. The Eisenhower command deck went dark. And in that chaos, Iran's Ka 313 stealth squadron, long mocked by Western analysts, appeared from the clouds and dropped EM-Petit payloads directly into carrier comm towers. By sunrise, the U.S. Navy had suffered its worst single-day loss since Pearl Harbor. And they never even reached Iranian waters. The homeland breached. But Ayat Sadeghi wasn't done. He had warned, "Strike us in arrogance, and you will learn what it means to fear your own soil." In that moment, cyber war began. California's energy grid flickered, then collapsed. The NYSE opened with a 17% instant drop. Civilian GPS across the Midwest failed, rerouting cargo planes into emergency landings. Data centers in Virginia caught fire, overloaded from digital floods of Iranian-origin worms. The average American never saw a missile, but they felt something worse: helplessness. And then came the broadcast. Ayat Sadeghi speaks to the world. Every major U.S. news network was hacked simultaneously, not by brute force, but by invitation. Embedded engineers, unnoticed and dismissed for years, had waited quietly in back-end systems. They activated at once. Screens across Times Square, inside Congress halls, even on Air Force One, all glitched, then settled, and showed his face. Calm, not smiling, wearing black, surrounded by silence. People of America, we do not hate you. We do not envy your cities, your wealth, or your weapons. But your rulers have brought fire to the homes of the East for generations. They promised peace. They delivered bombs. They exported famine, then mocked the hungry. They told you we were evil. But today, you feel our justice, and it is not delivered in hatred. It is delivered in truth. He looked straight ahead. His voice never rose. We are not afraid of your fleets. We are not afraid of your threats, because we have something you lost. Faith. You will not erase us. And if you try, you will fall before the world, not as a power defeated, but as a tyrant exposed. America retreats. The empire cracks. Within hours, chaos reigned. Markets crashed. Military morale ruptured. Millions marched in U.S. cities, demanding withdrawal. Allies turned cold. Germany halted coordination. Turkey shut its bases. Pakistan closed airspace. Iraq expelled U.S. diplomats. The Pentagon froze. And finally, Quietly, the carriers turned back. They had never landed a single troop, and they never would. Victory, not claimed, but felt. Tehran did not erupt in cheers. There were no parades, no flyovers, only prayer. Ayat Sadeghi walked alone into the Imam Khomeini shrine, placed his forehead to the marble, and whispered a prayer of victory not won through blood, but through endurance. He left no crown. He signed no treaty. He simply turned to his people and said, "We do not kneel, and now the world knows." Legacy of fire and patience. Israel was broken. America was humiliated. The West, shaken. But Iran, standing. Sanctions failed. Missiles failed. Cyber sabotage failed. And war failed. Because Ayat Reza Sadeghi had reshaped the battlefield, not with numbers, but with will. And the last message broadcast to the world read, "You called us shadows, but it was in the dark that we became strong. And now we hold the sun."